Today marked another day with no major decisions from the Supreme Court, where we await several significant rulings ranging from Donald Trump's claims that he is immune from prosecution to the availability of medication abortion. So all of that very much hangs in the air, as do the controversies surrounding Justice Samuel Alito after it was reported that the flags associated with the January 6th insurrection, two of those flags, were raised over at least two of Alito's homes. The justice blamed his wife for flying one of those flags, saying it came after a very nasty neighborhood dispute. But it was later discovered that the Alitos were flying that flag nearly a month before the fight with their neighbor. And now that neighbor is speaking out.
At best, he's mistaken, but at worst, he's just outright lying. In that interaction, she approached us, started screaming at us, used all of our full names, which to me felt like a threat because you're a stranger. We don't know you. You don't know us. How do you know our full names? And I started yelling, "How dare you?" Because they both were there at the same time. So I said, "How dare you? You're on the highest court in the land. You represent the Supreme Court of the United States. You're behaving this way. You're yelling at a neighbor. You're harassing us. How dare you? Shame on you."
Joining me now is Mark Joseph Stern. He's a senior writer at Slate Magazine covering the courts. Mark, I was very interested in what this neighbor had to say. First of all, because her account differs from that of the justice, which seems significant. But also, you know, there's been a lot of talk about him recusing himself. And today, Justice Alito did recuse himself on a minor case relating to Chapter 11 bankruptcies. Can you talk about the sort of the dissonance there between his desire to recuse him from one case that has nothing to do with the major scandal that surrounds him right now?
Yeah, so Justice Alito is one of a few justices who owns individual stocks and still trades those stocks, as we all discovered when Chris Geidner at Law Dork reported that he had sold off stock in Bud Light during the controversy when Bud Light had a transgender spokeswoman. And he recused himself from a decision today, almost certainly because of his ownership of some individual stock, probably a small amount, a few $1,000s, almost as if to say, yeah, I can do this when I want to, and to remind us that he is not doing it when he doesn't want to, which is in some of the major cases to come before the court, including, as we should keep saying over and over again, Donald Trump's prosecution for crimes relating to January 6th, which he seems hopelessly conflicted on in the legal sense that he should not be sitting on this case. You know, the interview with the neighbor confirmed some information that the Washington Post, the New York Times had previously reported, which is that, as you said, that flag was flying before the conflict reached a boiling point. It really seems indisputable that Martha Ann Alito was supporting Stop the Steal. And when Justice Alito denied that in his letter to Congress, he wasn't just spinning the facts. He was potentially committing perjury in a letter to Congress, which is itself a very serious federal offense.
Does anybody hold him to task for that? Or can Congress?
It certainly seems like Congress isn't going to, or isn't even going to try. The sense I'm getting, and I've been pressing Senate Democrats on this to say, what is your plan here? They are throwing up their hands and saying, look, the election's getting closer. We're trying to confirm judges. That's the message that they're trying to send to the base. Well, maybe we aren't holding Alito to account, but at least we're getting some of these great judges through. And look, to be clear, the judges being appointed by Joe Biden are wonderful. Minorities, women, former public defenders, but they cannot undo the corruption and the ill gains that are being secured by a Supreme Court that includes Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas sitting on cases they have no business sitting on. And so I do see this extraordinary dissonance, not just with Alito's whole story, but with how Democrats are approaching this as though they can make up for their hands-off attitude to the Supreme Court by appointing good people to the lower court. You know, those good people on the lower courts will be reversed every time by Alito and Thomas and their ilk, unless Democrats try to tackle this and impose some real penalties on justices who break the rules that they themselves have claimed to follow.
Well, especially as the court is packing like 4 or 5 terms worth of blockbuster cases into one term. I mean, we're talking right now, there are 29 pending decisions that we're waiting for from this court, I think 16 of which are major cases. The fact that we haven't heard boo about any of those 16, Mark. I mean, how do you read the court's silence right now? The fact that they're going to effectively jam these decisions in the last remaining weeks of June, because the court's out as of July 1, right?
Yeah, well, the Supreme Court sets its own deadline, usually arbitrary, for when they'll finish getting down opinions. It's typically the end of June, at the latest early July. So they are going to pack in so many blockbusters into the next 3 or 4 weeks of news cycles in the hopes, I am certain, of having them get lost to the public as we approach July 4th, especially people start tuning out. And, you know, this is the grand strategy of this court. The conservative justices are greedy for these cases. I want to be clear that they have taken up a bunch of issues they did not need to resolve. They have prematurely waded into major cases because they want to use them as vehicles to shift the law to the right. They are packing in all of these barn burners into a single term, and now they're poised to dump them all on the public in rapid fire succession so that we can barely process one before the next drops. And I think what that means, it's the Friday news dump from hell for the next 3 or 4 weeks. We're just going to keep getting these major decisions and have a limited ability to respond to them. The political branches will have a limited ability to push back in ways that they might be able to, because before they know it, the next one will drop. Guns, abortion, immunity, the environment, it's all going to come flooding the zone, and we're going to struggle to really kind of process it all. And then the justices will flee for the summer and hope that the news cycle just fizzles out.
God, Mark, that's such a cynical assessment of the timing here, and I'm not trying to question you on that, but have we seen, is there anything comparable in recent Supreme Court history in terms of basically waiting to do an end run around the public and the media when you're issuing a really controversial ruling with landmark importance?
No, this is new. As recently as like 5 or 6 years ago, the Supreme Court still had only a handful of blockbusters each term. 10 years ago, maybe 2, maybe 3. It's only been really since Justice Barrett joined the court that they have escalated here, taking on more and more of these huge cases and stuffed them all in for the last couple of weeks of June, sometimes dropping 2 or 3 major ones every day, dropping them a few days in a row so that you really can't focus on it if you're a regular person. You've got a life to live. The Supreme Court is dismantling, say, affirmative action, abolishing student loans, killing the administrative state. It is head-spinning and very difficult to follow. And I really do think that it is a strategy. It is not a coincidence. And part of it is the conservatives don't know how long they'll have this supermajority. It could end at any time. You know, health could get in the way, whatever. A scandal could get in the way, although it seems like no scandal could get a conservative to resign.
I feel like the scandal's already gotten in the way, Mark.
But you know, something could change the way the court is constituted, and they want to get it all done now. They learned the lesson when Justice Scalia died in the middle of the term in 2016, and they had to put a bunch of those cases on hold and set those issues aside for a few years because they lost their votes. They don't want that to happen again. And so that is another part of this tactic, is just getting this all done as quickly as possible while they've got the votes. They've got them right now. Who knows how long it'll last, but they're going to get it done.
Speaking of Supreme Court justices enmeshed in scandal, Clarence Thomas, tomorrow is the release of the justices' financial disclosure reports. And I know because you tweeted this out. Fix the Court released a list of gifts the justices have received in the last 2 decades. And wow, the reported gifts for Justice Clarence Thomas, I don't know if you at home can see these numbers here. He's by far and away the person who has received the most gifts, an estimated $2.4 million in reported gifts. And the Fix-A Court estimates he received up to $4 million in gifts. Mark, is there no, I mean, and we just move on? Is that the idea here?
Rather than reiterate how utterly broken our system is, that there's seemingly no accountability for a justice who takes millions of dollars in gifts and then illegally refuses to disclose them, I want to point out some of the other numbers on that chart. Look at some of the liberal justices and the moderate justices. They are not participating in this same racket. Some of these justices, like Souter, look, even Kavanaugh, they only have a few $100s worth of gifts that they've received. They are trying, to some degree, to play by by the rules while they watch their colleagues flout those same rules. And the point I want to make is that it is possible to serve as an ethical justice. It is possible to say these are the guidelines that both Congress and the judiciary itself have set, and I'm going to work within them. Clarence Thomas has decided he is above those rules and quite literally above the law. And that really does set him apart. I think even from someone like Sam Alito, who comes in second, a distant second, having accepted many gifts from billionaires, but it's still not on the scale of Thomas. And so what this shows is that Thomas is in a league of his own when it comes to this kind of corruption.
Yeah, I would say Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito are in mutual leagues of their own. Different ways, different justices, same court. Mark Joseph Stern, thank you again for your time and incandescent rage about what is a broken court. I thank you, my friend, for joining me tonight.
Thanks so much, Alex.